Welcome to the PokerRoad Radio Show, hosted by Gavin Smith, Joe Seabach, and Bart Hansen. PokerRoad Radio is the only poker radio show that won't tase you, bro.
And welcome everyone here to the day off between day 3 and day 4 of the North American Poker Championship from the Fallsview Casino and Resort in Niagara Falls, Ontario. You know that intro, did you guys see the little video clip a while back? I think it was a month ago with the guy getting tased.
No.
In the John Kerry speech.
Well, it's good you explained it, because otherwise nobody would have appreciated that intro. No, but I didn't see it.
You guys aren't living in the world?
We're poker. we're poker players.
Okay. I'm sure everybody else listening to this saw that. It was quite funny when the guy got tased.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody else probably saw that, and Barry and I are the only two people that have not seen that, Bart.
I would. It seems like it. I would say so. Barry, you're doing really well in this tournament here.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting. I listened to your shows, and I heard how you guys were laughing about how everyone took picks. And
I know. They did not get drafted.
Look
at this.
And that I wasn't one of the picks. How did your picks do compared to me, Gavin? You had all those 6 guys you chose before me.
I should have drafted you, obviously. I've got one. I've got one left. I've got one guy left.
You're just not a team player. That's the thing. I'm on the team now. We do the stuff together, and
well, I am a team player, except for the fact that because my team.
So who did you think was better than me that you chose?
It's not even so much better as much as I've got 2 of my best friends were still in, and I drafted both of them. I took Peter Feldman and Bill Edler. I took Ruthless because he had a ton of chips. Mm-hmm. I took Nick Schulman because he had at the time also more chips.
All these guys, I assume.
And I think Nick's a fantastic player. And who did I take 5th? The last guy that I took instead of you was
Nick Schulman, Bill Edler, by the way, out.
Yeah.
So is Peter Feldman.
And Peter Feldman.
And my other guy's out too. The only one that I've got left is that Adam Levy.
Yeah. Well,
the fifth, whoever my 5th pick was, I can't remember what it was either, but I'm pretty sure it was probably a friend of mine. I usually draft my friends.
Well, I'm taking you off my fantasy team. I'm telling you that right now.
I would. I haven't done anything.
Barry,
forever.
he was so proud that no one drafted you too. I mean, it was like his whole thing that day.
Yeah, isn't that cute?
Yeah.
Proud is not the right word. I was amused.
Oh, you were amused.
I was very amused.
You were beaming. It was the only thing that you could talk about for a while.
What I thought was hilarious was when Melissa, instead of taking Barry, took Kathy Liebert and Bobby Blonde.
yeah, that was. Well, I noticed these people who didn't take me aren't putting their money where their mouth is. People always, say, "Well, you're making these bet against these other players and all this type of thing." And
I've put my money where my mouth is against you many times.
Yeah, but I always give you like a 2-to-1 chip lead or something. But no, you have. But I'm saying in general, people talk or do this stuff. Who's going to put their money up? I was nothing against Bobby, he's a friend of mine, but when he had 4-to-1 chips over me, I was trying to get an even crossbook, him against me, and I couldn't.
I would have loved to have had a piece of that action.
Yeah.
So Barry, I mean, you are above. It's interesting because I'm looking at the statistics here. There's 18 people left, 6 people above the chip average. Average doesn't mean much. That would tell you that the chips are more swayed to the leaders, right?
Yeah, they're really people with a lot of chips. I've got to double up to have a decent chance to get.
How much do you have right now?
I have 612,000, which is just over average, and that surprisingly, even with 18 people left, puts me in 6th. Because there are 4 guys that have over $1 million.
Right.
And Jonathan Little, who's going to be our guest later on in the show, he's got just under 1.576 million. He won the Mirage, a tournament that you won eons back, Gavin. Mm-hmm. He is in really good shape. Now, have you been playing with him at all in the tournament?
I don't know if I've ever played with him at all.
Really?
I don't even know who he is, to tell you the truth. I mean, I know now that he's won stuff and has done real well. But like a lot of these good young players, to me they're all the same until I play with them. And I'm sure he's a good player based on his results.
And Jonathan's the type of guy too that you wouldn't really notice that much, because typically when you play with people, you notice them for one of 2 reasons: they do something funky, they do some crazy ass play on you, or they're antics.
They're like Raincon.
And Jonathan, he's pretty subdued and pretty he keeps himself when he's playing, and he's a pretty solid player. Doesn't he'll gamble it, but he's not going to do something like totally crazy on you usually. So.
Now, did anything of? I mean, how did your day go yesterday, Barry? You doubled up early on, right?
Well, actually, I halved early on. I started with 68, and I raised with my some garbage. I got re-raised, and then I brought in a pot with garbage, and the guy called the flop. I bet on the flop and got raised, and I quickly found myself at 32,000. I said, well, looks like it's going to be a bad day. I picked up the blinds, and then I won a pot where a guy was real short, where I had king queen, I think, against jack 10, where we were in the blinds or something, and I had 52,000. So, or maybe, 52, almost 60,000. And then a good thing happened. It actually almost helped me that I was short. I had 2 8s. I raised. A guy called me, a young kid from Toronto, nice kid, and flop came 8-5 deuce, flop top set, and 8s was the biggest pair I'd had the day before. I really haven't been having any big hands, and now I flop top set, 2 hearts on the board. I bet he called. Now 10 came off on the turn, and I only had 40,000 left, and I thought the best way to proceed, since he didn't raise me and I didn't have that many chips, he pretty much can't have an overpair to the 8. He would raise or even with a pair of 7s or something like that for the chips I had, he might take a shot there with a small flop. So I didn't think he could have too much. If he's got like a set of 5s or deuces, the money's going in. Those hands you don't have to worry about. But the hands that don't play themselves pretty much lend to you thinking he doesn't have too much, and he's just kind of hoping I don't have much. So I thought that better than firing another bullet is checking and letting him think that I can't call, because he had a lot of chips and I didn't. He had 200,000, I had 40,000 left. And as I expected, I checked. He bet 20,000, and I'd bet 12,000 on the flop after raising in for 9. And so that's perfect for me. I had another 20,000 left. At this point, calling announces that I've got a hand that can go all the way. There's no reason to just call. I've got another 20,000. Right. I put it in, and then he started saying, "Well, I think I'm pot stuck at this point. I think I'm getting the odds to call." And he thought a little while, and he apparently did some calculations that had said, "Yeah, I'm getting the right price to call." And he called and turned over ace queen. So he wasn't getting the right price because his chances were 0.
Yeah, he was drawn dead.
Boy, you need that pot to be awful big there.
Yeah, right. So, he was hoping I had 1 pair, and he hoped he had 6 outs, and he decided he had the right price. So that was very nice to get my chips in, with the other guy drawing dead. So now I double up. And within the next round, probably when the blinds came back around, I was in the small blind, and a guy wanted the right of the button, raised in. He had 50,000 in front of him. And I made it either 40 or 45,000. I can't remember which one it was, but I had 2 queens, and sometimes you'll raise to 24,000, half the guy's chips. That to a good player looks like strong. Why are you making a bet that means you're pot stuck and gonna call? It can be 2 reasons. One, that you're protecting yourself against people behind you in case you're not going through, and the other is that you don't want to scare the guy out, which is sometimes scarier to a good player. So I said, well, it's better just put in 40,000. I saw someone do it earlier with an ace-jack against someone at the same table where they overbet to put the guy in. And I said, I'll just overbet, let them know I'm playing with them, and make it try to look like I'm trying to get my fold equity when, of course, with 2 queens at that point, I'm not looking for fold equity. I'm looking to get called. I have the guy covered. And then Jeff Manson behind me started thinking a little, and then he said all in. And the first guy immediately folded, and it came back to me. And now I had 120 at that point. I just doubled up. And I said, my head, I said, if he's playing solidly, he's got 4 hands. He's got ace-king, aces, kings, or jacks. I take queens out of the equation because I've got them. And against those, I'm only in great shape against jacks. I'm racing against ace-king for the rest of my chips, but I'm pot stuck, and aces and kings I'm in bad shape. So it's kind of for the next 75,000 or whatever I had, kind of questionable. If it was a solid player, doesn't make many moves, I might give him credit for those aces or kings and fold. But Jeff Matson's got some other plays in his book, and he could still think, one, I kind of over-raised a little bit. Most people, when it goes raise, re-raise, make a 3 times to 4 times raise. I made it a 5 times raise. And the other thing is he may think he has fold equity because, I could still fold at this point and the other guy could fold. And Jeff's capable of doing it with some stranger hands. 2 10s, of course, and 2 9s are good hands for me, but ace, queen, ace, jack, who knows? He may just think there's fold equity there because it was a late position raiser and I'm a re-raiser. So taking that all into consideration, I pretty much have to call, I think.
And he ended up having 2 jacks, right?
He ended up having the best hand for me, 2 jacks, and everything came friendly. And they're in one, basically in 10 minutes, I went from 32,000 to 250.
Now, I heard you guys talking about it before the show, kind of going over the analysis. And Gavin, you sometimes get the reputation, which I think you probably welcome, that you're somewhat of a wild man. And you were saying if you were Madsen in that spot and you had played the hand as Madsen, you probably would have had a better hand there than 2 jacks because you rarely put in that re-raise?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard for me to really have a hand there. It's just hard for me to ever make that play. I'm not much of a re-raiser.
Mm-hmm.
So just about any hand that I would have there, that I was going to play, I would probably flat call Barry's raise with.
Well, it's kind of weird to flat call 45,000 when I've got 75,000 behind it.
I do a lot of really weird things.
Well, okay. Yeah, I really hope we don't discuss it any further. I'm afraid you'll teach me something.
No, it is kind of weird, I guess, a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. I just like to. I mean, it's such a weird spot because the raise is so big that it's this gonna. I mean, you're just not gonna. I mean, I'm not gonna get to call with any of my funky hands, so I don't know.
Yeah, what are you calling with that you're not raising with?
Right, that play just doesn't come up very often. So I mean, but if I was the third person in there, I wouldn't have 2 jacks. I know that.
And how often do you have to put a guy on being able to make a move there? I mean, it's a weird thing because going through the chips in my head, you said that there is some fold equity. I mean, it's 45,000, you get 75,000 left. But obviously you think that Madsen, there is some chance that, a percentage of times he is making a play here, right?
Yeah, he's. This is only the second time I've played with Jeff, and he was a bit of a wild man the first time I played. And this, I played with him here for, let's say, an hour. Actually, it was the first level, so not even that. It's only a half hour, 45 minutes going into this hand maybe. And he looked like he had it toned down. Oh, we were at another table the first day, and he wasn't dancing around too much. So I'm assuming that in his later years, he's probably now all of 22 years old or something, 23. That now he's toned it down a little bit.
And I don't know if this would have gone through Jeff's mind or not. I would hope it did. But I mean, Barry's probably not the best guy in the world to
stop it there.
To do this with a play. And the reason I say that, if you're making a play, you kind of want a guy who, might be interested in moving up, right, and might want to protect those last chips more than someone like Barry. Barry's gone on record, and everyone knows that he's here for one reason. He's here to try to win the tournament, and if he thinks this is the time he's going to put his chips in, he's not going to worry about
a couple $1,000 that he might lose, right?
Moving up spots or protecting those last chips and nursing a short stack. He's going to look to give himself the best opportunity to win the tournament. So. Probably if you were making a move, you'd want to pick on somebody that might have a little more fold equity than Barry.
Just with the same hand, yeah.
Right.
Now you guys brought up a good point, and you talked about it. I was going to ask you about this guy, Kofi Farke, who is kind of an unknown, or he's an internet player, and he was to your right most of the day, right, Barry?
Yes.
And specifically a hand that I saw posted up, and it speaks to your hand there with a pocket eights when you flop top set. When you raise it pre-flop and you walk into a monster, especially in position like you flop top set, what goes through your mind to bet the flop and then check the turn as opposed to maybe checking the flop and raising the turn? It's almost like I seem, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you make the bet on the flop more often than not because you're expected to make the continuation bet, and then by checking the turn, you almost feign weakness. I mean, you bet that flop, and that guy called pretty thin with just ace-queen, right? I mean, obviously he didn't sense any type of strength.
Yeah, well, I have to bet the flops the way I play because I bet when I miss also,
exactly.
So I need to do it to protect that. And, you see some players that you quickly recognize, and there are even a couple in the field right now that I've seen. They hit the flop, they always check. They miss the flop, they always bet.
It's backwards, right?
Yeah, well, it can work if people are going to bet your hand for you every time you check to them. And what happens maybe the first time you play with that guy, you may get it wrong, or someone else may get it wrong. It's not like those strategies don't work for some of those guys. But I even noticed a couple years in the World Series, I can't remember his name, some guy, every time he flopped an ace, he checked. Someone bet, he checked, raised, and he ended up making it to the final table that way. But I've noticed that guy hasn't done anything since then. I think it's because people saw, okay, if he checks, you don't want to bet his hand for you. And we have a couple guys in the field like that now. If they check to me, I already know they're there. I'm not going to bet their hand. And if they bet, I probably can raise them and take it away.
Right. I think it's really what I tend to do, and what I like to tell people to do is ask yourself, when the action on you, especially if you're last act, ask yourself what you would do if you had, the the hand like ace jack or ace queen or ace king when you flop a monster? And the answer is almost always that you would bet that hand.
Right.
So if you'd bet it with that, and everyone knows you'd bet with that, then why not bet with top set? And you might get people doing like crazy stuff like Barry had with that guy with the ace queen, just ripping, thinking there's a chance he's good.
Well, one of the other things too, I mean, the difference between a cash game and a tournament, especially in a deeper cash game, is guys are making moves, it seems like, at these pots with total air in tournaments, right? I mean, if they think that you miss, you might get them to make a move on you on the flop with absolutely nothing, right?
Well, but I still think, generalizations go out the window pretty quickly. We're playing against individual people, and it's just how soon you can get down to what does this individual person do and what have I seen him do. And I noticed you guys were talking about that on the show yesterday. That's the strength that, hopefully, when you're playing live, you come to those conclusions quicker than when you're playing online.
Now, there was a hand again, and I want to talk about what you think about this guy, Kofi Farkey, but Kofi Farkey had raised it pre-flop, and this was the hand that Jeff Schulman went out on, and he had raised it pre-flop.
Jeff Schulman.
I mean,
Jeff Schulman from Card Players here.
Excuse me, Nick
Schulman.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And you were at the table here when this happened, and the board came out Jack 7-4, and it got checked to Kofi. He bet, and Schulman called, and the turn was inconsequential, and it went check.
No, actually the turn wasn't inconsequential. It came Jack 7-4, different suits, and the turn was the Queen of Diamonds putting up 2 diamonds. And so to give you an idea how inconsequential it was, Nick Schulman's hand was Ace 7 of diamonds.
Oh, okay. See, that wasn't.
And so he called with second pair top kicker and then backdoor flush draw. Now picked up the backdoor flush draw, and I have a feeling if it might have even gone. If Kofi would have bet the turn, Nick may have even moved in on him, on a semi-bluff because, he wouldn't have been sure where he was. And Kofi is a very liberal player from what we've seen. He did a lot of the dirty work at my table, by the way, knocked out Alan Cunningham and then this hand. So, Nick wasn't going away when the diamond came, but it went check. And I guess I'll pick it up.
Go ahead.
Now, the river was the nightmare card, really, for Nick. It was a 7.
Yeah.
An ace is a bad card. A 7 is a worse. There's no way against this guy, Kofi, Nick's ever getting away. And Nick made a big bet, actually, one of these over bet, like I'm trying to bluff you type things in case you have a jack, and checked when the queen hits. Nick made a pretty good sized bet. Kofi raised him all in. Nick was happy and said, I'm all in case I'm not all in type of thing.
Kofi had pocket 4s.
And Kofi had checked the 4s on the turn. He basically played it from the back position like I'd played my 8s.
Mm-hmm.
He bet the flop, which was expected of him, and then he checked on the turn to act like he didn't like things when he was actually very happy. But he was actually in jeopardy, which he didn't know.
Right.
And pretty much the only cards that he was going to get a lot of chips were an ace or a 7. And he did hit one of those 5 outs. He had 5 outs to get the goods.
Obviously he didn't know what Nick had, but in fact there, like you said, if he had bet the turn, he would have definitely gotten a bigger pot. You might have even seen it all in.
Well, it wasn't. He couldn't get a bigger pot as it was, but he probably would have been better off betting.
Right.
Just because the only reason he got all these chips was because there were 5 outs for him to get all the chips. Whereas betting on the turn, he was going to get chips anyway and maybe get an all-in at that point as it was. So he had to get lucky to bust Nick.
Right.
Where betting, again, continuing to bet, he wouldn't have needed to get one of those lucky 5 cards to get most of the chips.
And there's another example where I think if he were to ask himself, as he's thinking about his decision here, what would I do if I had a jack here, which is what the hand he represented on the flop, right? And if he had a jack there, he would bet it, basically all of the time.
Again on the turn with a queen coming on the turn?
Absolutely. How do you put a guy on hitting the queen? I mean, the queen might bring a backdoor draw, but you don't put a guy on making the queen unless he, might have queen jack or something.
Yeah, sometimes you might do what you might do there, especially from back position. You're, as you say, in position here. The guy's checked you. Is you don't make too big a bet, but you make a bet that you're hoping the guy will read as I can be taken off my hand. You give him room to hang himself.
Right.
And of course, like say, if an offsuit king had come, he probably wouldn't have seen any more action on the hand. He wouldn't have gotten an additional
even the
chips.
Queen. He's gonna. Well, Nick had enough that he's gonna call. He knows Nick has something to call. Again, I'm not even saying his play was wrong. I'm just saying there are 2 ways to look at it. We know now, seeing both hands, that in some sense his play was wrong based on the way the hands were. That he was going to get played with betting, and he wasn't. And checking was actually the way to win as small a pot as possible if things didn't work out.
Now, what did you think about this guy?
Or lose, by the way, of course. If a diamond came, give the guy a free draw.
What did you think about this guy, Kofi? Again, we talked about him yesterday. We haven't really, no one's really familiar with him.
He's another one of those young players. He's 19 years old. I think he said it was his first $10,000 tournament. And what I find with a lot of them, he's a bit of a loose cannon. He's dangerous. He had a lot of chips. He liked to raise a lot. He busted Alan Cunningham, which was a nice thing for those of us at the same table, where he had been coming over the top of Lee Markholt, and Lee could never call. And finally, Lee got ace-king of spades, was ready to ship it in. He raised, Lee raised, someone called, and now Kofi made it 62,000. Lee had brought him for 18,000. Alan Cunningham moved in, and now it comes back to Lee Markholt, who's got a call like 100,000, and now it's kind of tough. He's going to easily ship it in against Kofi, but Alan Cunningham making the third bet is kind of a hard guy to play.
What a spot.
So he was in a tough spot, and he thought about it, and he knows, obviously, Alan's, basically Alan's probably got queens, aces, kings, or queens, ace, king himself, and he's either racing or in bad shape. So he made a reasonable decision to fold, and the guy behind him now thought, I think with like ace, queen of clubs or something, and thought, now it comes back to Kofi, who had to call another 100,000 and had, as expected, ace jack off suit. And
Alan have.
Well, I'll get to that. So Kofi, what do you do with Kofi's hand? Well, the problem is he'd put in 62,000. Alan raised another 100. Alan was about to, if he wins this pot, be a force in the tournament. And Kofi, felt he was pot stuck. He was getting at that point for 100,000, way over 2-1 out. But there's like 130 plus the other 40, 170 to call. He was going to call 100, and he was going to get 170 more. Mm-hmm. Is that right? No, more.
60. He needed to call 60, right?
No, Alan had 160.
Oh, okay.
Kofi put in 62. So there was.
So there's going to be 220,000 there. He's got to call 100 to win 220,000.
Yeah, 220,000
plus.
But there's 40 more on the side, that the other guys put in. So I haven't even added it all up. So so let me do it. Just I'm sure Gavin's right. 40 on the side, and then from
about 260 total.
So 100. Yeah, 260
260, 100,000 the call.
Yeah.
So 2.6 to 1.
So he's getting a good price, almost 3 to 1, and so even against 2 queens and 2 kings, he's actually getting the right price. Very likely holdings for Alan, and he had a lot of chips. And if Alan somehow has 2 tens, he's obviously getting a great price. I don't think he could count on Alan having like ace 10, but Alan had probably about the worst hand he's going to have. He had 2 tens. And so Kofi was in good shape, except I think 2 aces were out of the deck, and voila, the flop came down with the other ace, and that was the end of Alan Cunningham.
Wow.
Now let me ask you though, given the stage that the tournament was at, given the amount of chips Lee Markholt had, if you're Lee Markholt, and the way this hand's played out, that Alan may sort of push a little bit lighter against this Kofi guy because he's been raising so often.
Well, that was actually the missing ingredient, and you're right, is that obviously we know Alan's a good player and a sharp player, and that is what's going through Alan's mind. This guy's been raising too much, and so Alan's values don't have to be the same. And really, I think for me, what it comes down to is there a chance Alan could be pushing with ace queen, where I actually have the best hand, is what I would be first deciding. I always want to say, is there some way where I really have the best hand? I'm just in great shape. And I think Alan could have possibly moved in with ace queen there, and of course would have been right, and would have won the pot, actually, I guess. But it's a tough spot, to put your tournament life on the line. I don't know that Lee made the wrong play. I don't know what I would have done. I think it's one of those where when you call with ace king and you lose, you say, that's stupid. What am I doing putting all my chips with ace king with that kind of action? And when you fold, it's easier, I think, to justify a fold because you get to live on.
We're going to take a little break here, and we will be back with phone calls, some emails, hand of the day from Falls View Casino Resort, North American Poker Championship on PokerRoad Radio. And we are back here on our day off between day 3 and 4. 18 people remain in the North American Poker Championship, one of which is Barry Greenstein with 612,000 chips. We got a phone call last night that we're going to go to. Again, you can call 877-836-ROAD, 877-836-ROAD, and leave a voicemail. And here we go.
Hi, my name is Mike, and I had a question about poker instructional websites. And I was wondering which site is best overall to join, out of the Poker X Factors, Card Runners, and the many others. I mainly play multi-table tournaments and sit and goes, but I also play a little bit of No Limit Hold'em cash games and Pot Limit Omaha. And I was wondering, in your opinion, which site, if you could only pick one to join, would be best to join? Thanks.
And that's a very interesting question because I wanted to bring that up on the show this week anyways. And he's asking which site is best, and I also want to ask the general question, are these sites good for poker? In a sense, do they give too much away? I only really have experience with the cash game ones like Card Runners, where these guys who are very successful high-limit cash game players basically film themselves playing a game and do commentary over it. So what do you guys think about these types of sites that are kind of a recent...
Well, I think that every time I hear someone say about educational stuff, does it give too much away? I think that's kind of silly. I guess it all started when Doyle Brunson wrote his book and put some incredibly valuable information in there. And, the bottom line is most of the time when people read these books or read and even study the game, they're not going to implement it as all that well. Like some people will, but I don't think it's a problem educating people. So the game gets slightly tougher, but I don't think that saying, "Wow, you shouldn't let out any of your secrets," because you're giving up too much. I think that's kind of it's kind of a little bit silly.
Well, you do face that even with we have the tips from the bear thing, and we're questioning how much should I give away. We're giving it away for free. What's right? So that is a thought because part of it is it's going to make people play better against me and Joe and Mimi and people I've taught also, and they're not happy with me talking about some of the stuff, and they weren't happy when I wrote my book. The good thing with my book is most of it was on living, as a poker player and how you protect yourself, and so much of it has gone over the head of, like, especially the younger players because they aren't in that situation. They haven't gone through the downswings and people borrowing money and all the stuff you face in a live game. And it's funny that now at these tournaments, now that my book's been out a couple of years, all these young players saying, now that I'm out in the live setting, your book was the best thing to protect me and it really helped me a lot. And I get so many people saying, I thought it was fluff, I thought there was nothing there, but there was a lot there. I just wasn't at that point in my career. Anyway, getting back to the question, which of these sites are the best? I don't know if it's our position to say that. And what you often find for any of the books, any of the literature, is it's what hits the person at the right time.
Right.
We're all in a different stage of our development. For me, none of this stuff is very good now because I've already learned it. For a beginning player, obviously they want things having to do with hands, and as I said, my book wasn't relevant to a lot of those people. But the way I taught Joe, first he asked me questions, and then he sat behind me and watched me play in many situations, and that helped him a lot. And sometimes I sat behind him and told him what I thought he was doing wrong on the internet. And so, Card Runners, they gave me a free subscription. Taylor KB's real nice to me. And he went to my alma mater, University of Illinois. And, it did remind me of how I taught Joe, that he sat behind me and watched me play, and I told him why I was doing stuff. So that method is good. As far as the other things you mentioned, I've heard of Poker X Factor and those others, but I haven't reviewed them and seen them. But I think for this guy, you go on the forums and see what other people are saying. And again, he may be at the right level for possibly any of these products. I don't want to say that they're good or bad. I don't know. But it's just like any poker book. Some people it hits and some people it doesn't.
Right. Plus, whenever you're, when I was first starting out and I read a lot of poker books, you always sort of went into it with the mindset that,
and there's no way I could tell.
You left me speechless on that one. But I actually did read a ton of poker books. But when you're just starting out, you're hoping, whenever you read a book, you're hoping that if you can get one piece of information that improves your game, then that it was worth the money to buy that book. And I think these websites are the same. If you can get one or two things out of the websites, then it's probably worth a couple $100 or whatever they're charging.
So you don't think it's
I don't see why you would ever want to like just limit yourself to one. If there's 2 or 3 great products, that might all 3 might help you. Why not? It's not like it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not like it's a lot of money. You're going to spend a few $100s, and it could end up making you, thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions.
Well, even another thing, and of course we, as Gavin, we know Gavin plays by the book, as he's just told us. But another thing is you want to find out what other people think playing by the book is. It can only help you, even if you disagree. I've read, the recent books, some of them have come out, and I don't agree with a lot of things. And like even for Joe, I say you should read it, and then I'll tell you what I think is wrong. But it's good to know, especially when you're going around these tournament fields, that a lot of guys have read those titles, and that this is what they're doing, and when they're making certain bets, that's where their background is. So as Gavin said, I don't think reading a book or getting one of these products is going to hurt your game.
You don't think it's a step? You don't think that it's a step up above literature, like a Card Runners video where a guy, who's made, like a Brian Townsend who's made millions and millions online, plays in a game, does commentary on that game at this particular level? You don't think that that's a couple steps up from a book? You think it's just kind of all the same thing?
I never commented on that, but do I think it's? I think it's a wonderful tool, but Barry's made millions of dollars playing poker too, and he's got a book out there. So is watching Brian Townsend getting you, it's just getting you. It's just a different sort of way of getting the information. Whether or not one's better than the other, I don't know. I think it's an excellent tool. I think there's a lot of different excellent tools, and I just think that if you really want to be a student of the game, and you want to learn as much as you possibly can, I don't think you should ever limit yourself. I think you should just get as much information as you can, and then mold it into your own game.
Even when you look, and again, I'm going by the forums where a lot of the younger players are, in this learning stage and trying these different things and discussing it. Most of them say discussing it with other people and playing is the best thing, and I think that still holds true in poker when you're starting. But normally they'll read a book and they'll say it was a waste of my time. So I think the downside to reading and doing this stuff is you end up saying it was a waste of however many hours. Well, is that really that bad? So there just isn't a big downside is what it comes down to. Right. If you're really going to be a serious student of the game, why not see what everyone else is talking about and reading? And I think boredom is maybe the worst thing that's going to happen to you.
Well, we've got some emails here, and I'm going to read one of them. Again, you can email us at prradio@pokerroad.com. I hope that answered, pretty thorough answer to that phone caller's question. Again, prradio@pokerroad.com for emails. This email comes from Tim Peters, and it's addressed to Barry. It says, Barry, I just listened to your podcast about the lobbying effort in Washington, and I'm writing to say thank you and to offer my help in preparing your remarks for the upcoming hearing in November. We've actually met. I introduced myself outside the Rio during the 2006 World Series of Poker. I'd written a review of your book for Card Player magazine, admire your book quite a bit, and I think you're the perfect choice for speaking to Congress about this issue. The key for the congressional audience, I think, is to be very straightforward. You're an advocate for poker as a game of skill, a powerful source of recreation, but you recognize that poker, like any activity, must be approached with responsibility. I was gladdened by the positive tone of your remarks after your trip to Washington. If there's anything I can do to help you or the PPA's progress in an effort to take the teeth out of the UIGEA, please let me know. In any event, I appreciate your efforts on behalf of poker. That comes from Tim Peters.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tim. And I frankly, because we talked to a lot of people, even though this game of skill thing comes up in the courts, it's really a smokescreen. Anyone who doesn't think poker is a game of skill is kidding you. You don't have to play it long to realize you get better as you play it, and it's the subject of mathematical study, computer science, economics, everything. And that's a joke that someone would say it's not a game of skill. I mean, it's got luck in it. So does any sport. The ball bounces funny, whatever. These games all have skill with elements of luck. But one of the things, talking to the PPA, they said, although they wanted me to be the spokesman, and I was preparing my, whatever it was, my statement to Congress for that. When we talked to John Conyers and some of the other people, they said one of the things that was really powerful when we came there, frankly, is that women were players. That what most of the Congress think is that seedy men and 21-year-olds who should be in school playing poker or younger, And to see the women, and especially Annie Duke, who she can talk a lot, let's just say that, and she's an intelligent woman, they were, I think, more impressed by her than anyone else in our group. And they thought that Annie maybe shows the diversity of poker better than I do. And so right now they are actually slanting towards Annie taking over instead of me and being the one who speaks. So that's what I was told yesterday. It's not a 100% deal, but it's like a 90% deal at this point, to the point that I stopped preparing my statement because it seemed like they want to go with Annie. And I think Annie will do a good job. I'm probably more popular than Annie with the younger poker players just because I'm more in there talking to them and stuff like that. I've almost become like father poker, because I'm old enough to be their father. Most of the players' father listen to this broadcast or who are posting on the web. But just imagine a woman, a mother of four, up there talking to Congress saying, I play, there's nothing wrong with playing poker, and it may work better than me delivering the same statement.
Well, that is definitely interesting news there. I don't know if, again, you can email. Barry's going to be on the show one last time tomorrow as the co-host, prradio@pokerroad.com if you have any more questions. Want to get along here to the hand of the day, and this was a hand that happened yesterday, and it was one of the biggest pots of the tournament. And this involved several players, and I'm going to go through the hand right now. Jean-Robert Belande limps. Joe Cassidy, who was one of the chip leaders in the beginning of the day yesterday, raises. Scott Clemens calls. Arun Jamasi calls from the big blind, and Belande calls as well. The flop comes Jack 4-3 Rainbow. It's check to Cassidy, who was the pre-flop raiser.
Well, the only thing, you never said how much the raises were, right?
I didn't. I think that Cassidy puts in a pot size bet. The information here from Card Player and the WPT didn't specify that, but I think this is a pot size bet here from Cassidy of 30,000 on a Jack 4-3 Rainbow board.
No, I understand he fires out 30,000, but I mean I didn't get an impression of, you said John limps and Joe raises,
well, I mean,
but I didn't know how much.
They went 5-way, so if his pot size bet on the flop was 30,000, then he probably made it 6,000 or in that.
Somewhere around there,
right?
Yeah.
But we don't know what the blinds are.
I believe this was in either the first or the second
First or
level.
second
so you guys
level
started
of-
up back at 1,500, 3,000, right? So it was either 1,500. No.
Yeah, it ends up, this is really, the reason I bring it up, because I know something about the hand, it's really relevant as to what people would have called Joe's raise with before the flop. But okay, we don't have the information.
Do you have the information?
I don't have the information
okay.
either. I don't know, and it was the first question I asked when I was told about the hand. Well, how much did the guy have to call before the flop?
Right.
So you can put him on a hand.
We
do a thing, we always used to say, although I don't know how relevant it is in today's game, but a long time ago, when I used to play, let's say 30 years ago, we'd say you raise to qualify the hands was the words we would use, and so you know what to put people on. And now people don't raise as much as they used to when I played 30 years ago. We would always raise more than the pot, or someone would bring it in for a certain amount. You'd raise 5 or 6 times, or even move in on the guy. You wouldn't let him have cheap draws at you with small pairs. Now, and I think part of it is because of tournaments, people raise like 3 times what the guy brought it into very typically, which in my thinking and the way I used to play is letting those small pairs have a really good shot at you for flopping a set. If you have aces and you have 200,000 in front of you and the guy has deuces and he brings in for 3,000, you make it only 9,000. It's almost like the deuces have the best of that situation if you're going to go off for your whole stack once he hits a set. You know what I'm saying? So I would always raise more, especially the way I used to play. But it's not totally right because it's almost like, and I can't remember if I brought it up on this show, one of the shows earlier, it's like you're gambling with the big pair to try to pick up something instead of just the pot at that point. So
even though we don't have the raise amount here, I think what's paramount is that Jamasi called from the big blind because his hand is going to, so he's going to get priced.
And he's closing action too. He's now being the 5th man.
Well, no, he's not closing action because if Belande limped and Joe raised, then there's no way he can never be closing action.
Belande's up front, but you've got 3 other guys there.
But it's Belande who's probably never limping with anything anyway. So
so the flop came out Jack 4-3 and it got checked to Cassidy. Again, was the pre-flop raiser. He fired 30,000. It got folded around to Jamasi.
Sorry to stop you, but did you say it's 4-way action or 5-way action?
5-way is what he said.
You said 5, but I only saw 4. I saw Belande, Cassidy, Clements, and Jamasi.
Oh, okay.
4-way action, excuse me. You're
okay,
right,
which
4.
Again does make a difference.
Okay. Jamasi check raises $30,000 bet by Cassidy to $100,000, driving everyone out but Cassidy from the pot. Cassidy elects to call, and the turn is a 6 of clubs. Jamasi moves in with Cassidy covered, a bet well over $250,000. So again, that's about a pot bet there on the turn. This puts Cassidy deep into the tank. He thinks for over 5 minutes, staring at Jamasi. Cassidy begins to talk to himself, and Jamasi, what could you have? 5-6? Man, you're like a statue. Does anyone know this guy? Cassidy continues to think. Then nearing the 7-minute mark, finally makes the call. Jamasi tables 3-4 for a flop bottom 2 pair, and Cassidy angrily shows pocket queens. The river's a king, eliminating Cassidy from the tournament and giving Jamasi over $850,000. Now the reason why, this was one of the big spots at this time at the tournament, and I just wondered, when you face a big check raise and there were 4 guys in the hand from the big blind, are you going to commit that many chips there with queens?
Well, the answer is that depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't know anything about Jamasi. I don't know him from Adam, so I have no idea who this guy is or how he plays. If it's a person who's capable of doing this play with a jack, well then yeah, sometimes you're going to go with 2 queens. If it's a person who's not capable of doing it with a hand that's losing to 2 queens, then obviously you're gonna fold 2 queens. I mean, Joe Cassidy's a pretty talented poker player, and I think he's done pretty well over his career, trusting his reads, and he probably trusted his reads, and unfortunately he was wrong this time. But I don't think you're always going to fold.
I mean, as a guy, and again, you say you don't know anything about Jamasi. If you're sitting down and you say you come to a new table and you don't know this guy, and he puts a big check raise in on a Jack 4-3 board, and then he pots all in on the turn with a 6. Is a guy going to do that with Ace Jack, thinking he's good when you call a big check raise on the flop?
Well, no, but a guy might do that with Ace Jack if he thinks he doesn't think I can do this with Ace Jack, so he's going to throw away a hand that's losing or that's beating Ace Jack. It can go to so many different levels if you want to think it. Well, typically, what I like to do in when I'm a lot of times is when I'm in a tournament, I'll gauge the field, and the weaker the field is in the particular tournament I'm playing, probably the bigger laydowns I'm willing to make, because I think I'm going to be able to get those chips back easier. But most of the time, obviously, I think most of the time you would fold 2 queens in this spot, but I don't think it's always, and I don't think you can fault Joe for having confidence in his read and going with it.
Well, there are a few things. First of all, Joe Cassidy is primarily a limit hold'em player, and a lot of people respect him as one of the top limit hold'em players in the world. And I find with the limit hold'em players, when they get an overpair, they aren't ever laying it down. Because in limit hold'em, you don't lay down overpairs. You get to where you have to check call against one player at some point. You put in enough action, you call it down, but you don't fold. And I have this with Mimi all the time. You ever see Mimi have an overpair, and she's beat? She's going broke. It's just real simple. That's what happens to her. I always have to worry about those situations with her. So it's the limit mentality that overpairs, anything that beats top pair ace kicker gets played. And then again, I was asking all those questions because how much did this guy call with 4-3 offsuit? Did Joe raise enough before the flop? As I was saying, it's one of the things you have to do to protect your big stack. Even in tournaments, it's a gamble to raise too little and let people in to draw against this hand.
Right.
And he may have raised too little. It's hard to imagine that this guy was calling your typical pot size type of raise. Normally when someone's limps, I may make it 4 to 5 times what they limp for at least, which is again a pot size top raise. Did this guy call that much, or did Joe just make it too cheap? I don't know the answer to that. And if Joe didn't make it too cheap, and this guy is the kind of guy who will call with 4-3, and Joe, you're saying you don't know the guy, but Joe at this point did know something about this guy. I'm sure he'd seen the guy do some other questionable things, and I'm sure that played into it, where Joe says this guy's just a kind of a loose cannon, and from Joe's point of view, this guy could never get away from top pair. The funny thing is, everyone after this hand happened, people are saying, what a terrible play Joe made, calling, as people say, with one pair when Joe was one of the chip leaders and get knocked out of the tournament. And then within like a half hour later, Bobby Belandi had 2 aces on a very similar board, a jack high board, and some guy raised Bobby Belandi all in, and he now made the obviously right play based on this one previous hand and showed 2 aces, and the guy showed him king jack. And so that was really the thing that hurt Bobby's tournament, was not winning that pot. So, it's poker, and a decision had to be made. And, very likely myself, when the guy check raised me $100,000, I would have at that point made the decision
Right.
with 250 behind that. Am I going for it all? I don't like calling a
Calling and
third of
see
my
what the guy
chips at
does.
that point and knowing that the next thing's coming. I'm going to say, because then what happens? I really get sick when a queen or 10 or ace comes where I could have actually beaten the ace jack or the jack with the other kicker. 100,000 is a pretty big raise. I may have just given it up at that point and saved that 100,000 and said, okay, this guy's done enough things, I can get him other ways. I'm not sure what he's doing. But Joe did raise a limper and bet strong on the flop. That represented Joe's hand. One thing I often tell people when I see some of these pots come down, if you're a good player and you make a play that says what you have, and now someone responds in a way that says, I know what you have, and I have that beat, because that's the dialogue of betting, then if you think that guy has some intelligence about him, you have to say, okay, I've told him, he's told me, I've got to fold. And that's what, I'm not saying Joe thought this guy was a good enough player, but that's what that 30,000 in that raise said. And the guy said, okay, I know you might have an overpair, but I'm okay with that.
Right.
Well,
No, I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense. That's well put. That is the point. And I agree with, I think probably, even though I am a proponent of flat calling, I think at that point with that much money on the flop, it might just be a foldership spot.
Well, we're going to take another little break, and we'll be back here to wrap things up from the Fallsview Casino and Resort, the North American Poker Championship. And we are back here with today's guest, Jonathan Little, on the day off between day 3 and day 4 here. John, you come in as the chip leader into this tournament, going into day 4. Some of the big things. You've won a couple of big pots. Tell us how your tournament's gone so far. How have you gotten up to where you're at right now?
Well, on the first day, I ended up getting in with a set of 8s against a bigger set, and I hit quads. So.
Oh, that was we covered that hand. That was.
It's always very lucky.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
It is.
Actually, cutting you off, getting in real early here. But one thing I wanted to ask you about that, since you brought up that hand, is when you win a hand like that, you almost feel like, well, I'm free rolling now. I should have been out. I won this hand, and I'm kind of wondering if you had the jacks against the 8s and nothing happened, you won. You were the best hand. You wouldn't have that same feeling. Feel, well, I have the best hand. That sometimes empowers you to say, either I'm running good, even if you're not superstitious, or, I'm just free rolling. I can now wing it and do whatever I want. And actually, in tournaments, sometimes lets you, with that free rolling attitude, do things you might not have done. So my question for you is, do you think you've done better because you won as the dog there, or did it have absolutely no effect?
I don't think it really had much of an effect. I kind of, like every level, I kind of sit down and think, okay, it's kind of a new tournament,
So you're just a machine.
Right.
Okay.
Now, we actually went over that hand on one of the first days, and I don't remember the guy that was in between. You remember the guy that had the set of jacks?
Ronnie Campbell had the set of jacks.
Ronnie Campbell. And Gavin said that he would have folded a set of 8s there in that spot, seeing what the action was.
If the action went the way that it was reported, as we know it sometimes comes out wrong.
Yeah.
If I lost that hand, I still have 8,000 chips because there was another guy that was all in that hand, and I was like sure he had aces or kings. And if I lost, I still have 8,000. If I'd won, I'd have 50,000. If I folded, I'd have like 15,000.
And by the way, I played with Ronnie Campbell a little bit in the cash game. He's got more play to him than I think you think, Gavin.
He was raising about 50% of the hands.
Oh, really?
So he wasn't playing as tight. In the action, that hand, of course, went the guy who ended up having the aces bumped it up and then made a gross overbet when you guys both called on the flop. Like 10,000 into a 3,000 pot. The guy called, and then you basically pushed.
Right. Ronnie had like 13,000, so it was only 3,000 more of the 10,000 bet.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided just to get it in,
Yeah. No, we had talked about, or I'd asked these two guys about, times when you might fold a set in a tournament, and it becomes very rare. What are the times when you release that hand?
That's definitely one of them, but the board's a little bit too draw heavy to let go of it, I think.
You thought maybe there's a possibility that someone had a...
Well, I thought he could have like king, queen of hearts or something, because there was a flush draw out there, and also he could have queen 10 for the nuts, but even then I'd be getting 3-1 or something.
Now, you won a absolute...
Wait, I think he brought up a good point there, is a lot of times people will see that the board is draw heavy and think, like if a lot of the chicken kind of players say, well, there's so many draws out there. Even if I have the best hand, they're going to beat me. That's the way some people think. But what Jonathan's saying is because it's draw heavy, that gives more possibilities that his hand's the best hand. So,
Right.
there's two ways to look at that situation.
Well, I mean, doesn't that come into play when somebody has a hand that's not, say, as strong as a set, like a top pair, and they think, well, if somebody's making a semi-bluff here with a pair, if it's a semi-bluff with a pair or something that beats me, my overall equity just isn't there.
I think what often happens is if you have enough chips to stand the loss, then you get in there, and if you're going to be knocked out, you take the chicken way out. That is often what you do.
Now, you won a pretty big race later on yesterday when your ace-king basically beat Karam's jacks, and you knocked him out of the tournament. And that was just a huge play. And the way it was reported was we had a raise, and Scott Clemens called. You re-raised with ace-king to 154,000. Karam pushes back over the top for 400. So doing the math in my head, you were getting about 2-1. So there's no way with your stack you're ever going to fold ace-king there, right? Pre-flop getting 2-1.
Never.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there was something going on there that I don't think you realized. At that point, we had Mark Karam up on the side as today's guest.
Yes.
So he was going to be the guest, and not only could Jonathan win the pot, but he could take over Karam's spot on the show, which is, I think, possibly bigger than being the chip leader in the tournament. There's only one thing I hope you understand. Because he was up on the side before you, people sending questions for Mark, you may have to answer as if you were Mark for some of those questions.
I'll pretend to be him for that
Okay.
part.
You pretend to be Canadian.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Work on your accent a bit. And of course, you won the Mirage, first prize over $1 million. So you have some experience, obviously, in some of these big events. What did you take from that event that's going to help you in this event with the position that you're in? Did you learn anything in the later stages?
I just learned to be calm and not panic or anything. Just sit there and let good things happen. Just don't. You can't really try to win the tournament tomorrow so much as you can the final 6, of course. But you just sit there and be patient and don't do anything ridiculous.
Have you guys found that some people that are, they're in the first spot, maybe with the chip lead going in with 2 days or 1 day left, they just not having experience in that spot, they just overdo it. They put, their foot on the gas and, just really step it up when they don't need to?
I don't know. I think that's totally dependent on the person that's doing it. Some people do that. If Bobby Belande's in that spot, he's going to overdo it. But I think that inexperienced people are probably more likely to err the other way. And probably
Which way is the other way?
Nurse the stack a little bit.
Oh, really?
And not try to get overly involved if they're very inexperienced. I think that probably the optimum way to play it is to probably to apply a pretty good amount of pressure when you've got that amount of chips.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I mean, I'm not gonna be a super net by any means. I'm not gonna be raising 100% of hands though. It's probably gonna be like 35% or something, which is a decent amount. But I'm not gonna be raising like 9-4 under the gun every single time.
Suited?
Yeah, suited, of course.
I think what happens with most of us is if we don't win, we just look for ways to blame ourselves, and at the end you say, well, I guess I should have been more aggressive, or I guess I shouldn't have played against that guy because he was playing so tight. I know for myself, I usually beat myself up more about not stealing enough, when I had the chip lead and not just going crazy, than playing too passively.
Now I got to ask you the kind of classic online versus live question. Now, from what I've heard about you, is you're almost more a hybrid now, where you're playing in more live events. You're a fiery Justice online, and have a lot of experience playing in online tournaments. What are some of the differences you see, and do you consider yourself more of an online or a live player? Which one do you like better?
I kind of like playing live more now, whereas in the past I didn't really like it quite as much because it goes a lot slower than it does online. And you can make better reads on people live, and that can give you a much larger edge because you can call a lot lighter or re-raise a lot lighter. Whereas online you kind of just have to play your cards, especially when you don't know the players at all.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I know I'm not as good an online player. To me, they're all the same. But now that I played in this tournament, I think this tournament more than any other, there's so many 19 to 23-year-olds in there. They're all the same to me. I might as well be that blank avatar. Even Jonathan, I don't think we've ever played together.
We played in Bellagio once.
Okay, then I don't remember it. And so, they're all really. So it's obviously because it's live after a half hour, I usually can start picking up things on them that I wouldn't online. But as Jonathan says, there is definitely an advantage if you're a live player, and as you're learning to play live, that some of the online players just don't even recognize at this point.
Are you starting to pick up some of those physical tells and things that would help your live game, starting to kind of mold that?
Definitely. There's a lot of just generic tells that people show all the time. They just don't even know they're doing. They're subconscious or whatever. And you can figure it out and then play accordingly.
Yeah, and maybe even bigger than that, frankly, is just tempo things. Online people are playing multiple games, and the tempo often doesn't tell you what's going on. Live, the tempo tells you a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
I was reading something about the Ship It Holla Ballas, which I guess is a group of online guys. Now, there were a lot of online players who are underage for the States here playing. Or is this the first time you've met some of these guys? And do you travel around with a group and kind of talk strategy with some of these guys?
Not so much anymore. We did about a year ago, whenever we were all, playing every event. But some of the guys are still underage. Most of them are over 21, and we go to a lot of the tournaments and hang out. Not so much as we used to, but we're still very good friends.
Now that he's got all the money, he's not telling anyone how he got it, I think.
Right, it's a secret.
Yeah.
Has some of these guys that you've never seen live before, some of the underage guys, have they impressed you, or have you, met some of these guys for the first time in this tournament?
No, I've known all of them for a few years. We used to play sit and goes on Party Poker, and we would get together and have get-togethers where we just have a little party or whatever. And you get to know people.
You'd have a little live party or an online party?
A live party, not in a chat room party.
A live party with
laptops.
A live party with laptops.
Yeah, and my day was lap dances. Your day is laptops.
Ours had both.
Yeah, right.
Oh, the times have changed. We actually had a phone call a couple minutes ago, and it was a question regarding online training sites. And I know that you were involved with, SNGIcons.com, which concentrates on tournaments and sit-and-go training. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you're trying to do with that?
It's a site that I own, and along with two other good sit-and-go players, and we basically teach people how to play optimal sit-and-go strategy online, because that's how I got most of my money, and the other two guys did too. And one of the guys, Big Joe, he's the highest volume sit-and-go player on Stars right now, and he does very well at them. And not many people know how to play very good sit-and-go strategy, and anyone can learn it fairly quickly to beat $10, $20, $50 games.
Yeah, but you use one word that doesn't make sense to me, especially with poker in the same sentence: optimal. Isn't that kind of overstating things? Optimal. Why is it optimal, and do you really believe that you play optimally?
It's just the math-based thing, and if you run the numbers late in a sit-and-go, there's hands that you always supposed to push, regardless of what they have. You can turn your cards face up and still push.
Well, okay, in that particular situation, but early on, it's still poker. You can't
There's still a little bit of poker.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, because in sit-and-goes, I know you don't like to use that word optimal, but like you were saying, when it comes down, towards the middle and the ending stages, there is a mathematical correct thing to do. Sometimes it's mathematically correct, like you say, to push or call with any two cards, which leads me to, have you been playing in any of these? Because I find it incredibly soft. Do you ever play in any of these one tables that go before these tournaments, like they were, spreading 1,200 right before this tournament, the first few days?
I don't play them that often because they're really a lot different than sit-and-goes, whereas online it's sometimes profitable to try to get third, and sometimes profitable to try to get first. And whereas in these live, you just have to get first. But there are very soft tables a lot of the time.
Yeah, Bart was at a couple. You might have wanted to play with him.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have played. I didn't know that. I'll be playing them more now.
Well, if you're going to play a few with Bart, just don't even think about trying to get fourth place, because that one's already locked
Ballbuster. Some of these online training sites, we discussed it earlier in the show. What is your view? What's the, say, you can make some extra money by running a training site like a Card Runners or like your site, or was it, some of the other sites, Poker X Factor. Are you giving away too much when you're trying to, giving away some of, say, your optimal strategy? From guys that have, won tons of money.
Well, in sit-and-goes, it's been fairly well known, the optimal strategy on the 2+2 forums. They have a forum devoted just to sit-and-go play, and that's where I learned everything that I know about sit-and-goes. And it's all there if you just research hard enough and study a lot.
So you have no problem giving away some of the information?
When you're just talking about late stage short stack stuff, what hands
right.
you'd play, that's
well, back on Party Poker, you only had 20 hands of the early levels, so you could kind of be very nitty in the early levels and not give up a whole lot. And on PokerStars, most people just play the turbos now, and even then there's only 15 minutes worth of deeper stacked play.
And have you noticed in some of these sit and goes, since the online bills come up, that they've toughened up a little bit?
They've definitely toughened up. It's much harder to get money online on a few of the sites now, and a lot of people are going broke online.
Yeah. Do you guys play sit and goes online at all?
I play them. I play the 1,000 or 2,000 sit and go stars. Matter of fact, I played two. They have these PCA Adventure things on Stars, so I played one with 18 players, one with 9. I won them back to back. That was kind of nice. Won 2 seats, and for the first time, I found out when you do that, they put something called W dollars in your account. I'd never seen that before on my thing. It's my first time with W dollars, I guess, because I won multiple seats.
Right.
And it's an exchange. You can sell them or buy them. Like there's almost like a going rate.
Well, I was playing because I wanted to win a seat for Joey and a seat for Alex and a seat for Mimi. I said I'll try to win a bunch.
I think you can use your W dollars to buy into the tournament, though. So
yeah, I'm sure you can. And then I said, hey, what's the W dollars? Yeah. But actually, what's kind of fun is you get those W dollars, and now you start buying into other things. And so I bought into a regular 2,000 sit and go, and I came in second, and then they put regular cash in my account. So it's almost like a game now. That stuff's like a game to me that I didn't know. I mean, you guys probably all know about that stuff.
Again, it was like, what is it, T dollars too? It's the same type of thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What's T dollars?
I think T dollars are the ones that you need to specifically buy into.
W dollars you can only buy into satellites.
Right.
And T dollars you can buy into anything.
T dollars you can totally buy into anything. Is Sunday afternoon still like a big day for you? Even if you're at a live event, like were you playing in some of the Sunday tournaments this week?
I played in a few of them this Sunday, but I mean the internet was kind of shaky in my room, so I didn't get to play all that I wanted to. But I probably play like one Sunday out of the month now.
And I saw that you were involved in this thing with the Poker Bowl. Explain a little bit what that was.
The Poker Bowl was kind of like a team-based tournament, but it was really just like a bunch of sit and goes played. It's like a double shootout sort of. And there were a lot of good teams, there were a lot of weaker teams, and it was a good thing. I think most everyone's going to get some TV time, and it was a fun time.
Yeah, one of the things, and I don't mean to knock you or it, but several people asked me about their teams, and the way they explained it sounded like it was like you had to cheat and signal or do something to the other people on your team at the same table. And I said, I built my reputation on being honest, and if I won it almost would be like I'd be saying, see, I cheated better than the other people. I mean, did you have any feeling of that it's like it's not real poker, it's collusion?
It certainly was not real poker. There was a lot of collusion involved. I mean,
there was a lot of collusion involved, right?
Well, of course, you're kind of supposed to.
That's the rules. I mean, it's not.
That's the rules, right? It's not against the rules. That's what you're supposed to do.
But you know what I'm saying, because you're now obviously by your results a good poker player. We can all see that, and then you think, well, I've gotten to where I am by being a good poker player, not being a colluder, and I'm having to.
It's like playing a different game, sort of.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Jonathan Little, I appreciate you stopping by, and again, you are the chip leader over 1.6 million, and good luck to you here. You got 2 days to go, and hopefully you can wrap up a second WPT championship.
Thanks a lot. Hopefully.
Though, a little information here that's probably showing why Jonathan's going to do very well. He won the Mirage. Right, I won the Mirage. Then I won Player of the Year. So if he wins this, he'll be like a huge favorite to win Player of the Year for World Poker Tour. I think it's just.
Is there anything more you can say about yourself now that we have Jonathan
here? I think it's all
here?
done. He came 7th at Biloxi that nobody mentioned, so he's got points. I think. Are you already?
Did you come 7th at Biloxi too? There was no Biloxi, Gavin.
There was no Biloxi then.
Or you would have probably.
No.
So you're saying just because he's mirroring your accomplishments from 10 years ago?
I think it's kind of following it. Yeah,
you're following in Gavin Smith's footsteps, is what he's trying to say.
Well, except for the fact that he's winning far more money.
Yeah,
that's the only downside.
Well, because this is Canadian and it's worth more.
Love to be in your spot when you're making the more money, especially. Again, Gavin did that so long ago. So, anyways, congratulations and good luck for you.
Great, thank you.
Going into day 4, and we will be back here to wrap things up on PokerRoad Radio. Coming back here on the day off from the North American Poker Championship. Closing comments, gentlemen. Barry, you're going in 6th in chips with 18 players left.
And no one picked me. By the way, when you do those things, Gavin, is it a winner take all? It's how much they cash? How do those bets work? Or
in this one, it's the pool will be won by whoever goes the furthest. It's to last longer.
Oh, okay. So would I have lasted longer already than just than any of the people in the pool?
Melissa has nobody left on her team, so all 5 people are out on her team. I have just Adam Levy and Jason has Jonathan Little.
That's a nice guy to have.
Scott Clements, And
he's still in.
I don't know if that's Scott Freeman or Freeberg or whatever his name was, the SC Trojans guy. He has him too if he's still in.
Yeah. Okay.
Parting Halloween words, Barry?
Yeah, this is Halloween. I don't think you guys know, but Joe was really hammering me at home before we came out here. And he said, for Halloween, for PokerRoad, I do this stuff for PokerRoad, which I wasn't initially going to do, but to help my son and the website out. And he said, it would be really a funny thing for PokerRoad if for Halloween you dress up as me and I dress up as you. He said, I'll wear one of your sweaters and your glasses, whatever, and you'll shave to look like me, and maybe we'll get a fake eyebrow ring or whatever he's wearing. And I said, Joe, I don't want to do it. Come on, that's goofy. You can do the goofy things. I'm not in for that. And he said, every day while we're out in at Niagara Falls, I'm going to be bugging you about this. And and he knows me well enough. My kids bug me enough. I give in. And he said, by the time Halloween comes around, you'll be dressed as me and I'll be dressed as you. So I didn't want to do it, and so I was trying to think, how can I get out of this thing? And so I talked to this woman at the border control, and I said, is there any way you could stop this kid from getting in the country? So that's really how that whole thing started. Joe, it's an April Fool's Halloween joke.
Well, very good. We will be back here tomorrow with more of Barry Greenstein and Gavin Smith. Hopefully Barry will be chipped up there close to the top. So we will see you next time on Poker Road Radio.